the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as she
We're out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days.
Always
And I want to talk about the
here
peaceful
in the
transfer
end.
of power, which, of course, we all know is
J6.
a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis.
Here we go.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day.
A
The
rigged
officers
election and a
coming
failure
under
of
attack.
security intentionally
Aides in the West
created.
Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her.
True.
It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In
This
fact, she said
story
at the
is
beginning,
one of my
oh, I'm surprised you're not
favorites.
talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David. All over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David? When are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted?
Nowhere.
Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward
These
another
guys
election.
are the worst.
Is there anything you regret about
The
what you did on
battlegrounds
that day?
forged the weak
Yes, sir.
I
men
had nothing to do
into
with that.
soldiers.
Should have sent the
I
National
asked her to
Guard.
make a
How about that?
speech. I showed up my speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington,
Yes!
D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know,
Yep.
this is going to be a very big rally, or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done
villain
by me,
was
it was done by
defeated,
others.
but
I said,
peace had
I'd like to
not
give
been
you
achieved.
10,000 National Guard Corps soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
They wanted it to
The question was
happen.
about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris
Okay,
to respond.
David.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Where were you with the pipe bomb?
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there.
Where were you in the,
And
with the
on
pipe
that
bomb?
day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob.
All the townsfolk
No.
rejoiced.
Our nation's capital.
Here we go.
Our nation's capital. On that day, 240 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
No, they
And
didn't.
understand,
No, they didn't. That is a lie.
Indicted and impeached for exactly
Not on that day.
reason.
Suicide.
But this is not an isolated situation.
Sicknick died of
Let's
natural
remember
causes.
Charlottesville,
Liar.
where there was a mob
So
of people
the
carrying
hero
tiki torches,
vanquished their foe.
spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did
Find
the
people.
president then at the time say?
Do it. Do it.
There were fine people on each side.
Liar!
Let's remember
Liar!
that when it came to the Proud
It
Boys
all
on militia,
started with a little minion.
the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by.
Man, she is
So
lying.
for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go
They
back.
lived happily
Let's not
forever
go back.
after.
We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that
You're
was
in
a bridge
power.
too far for you, well, there is a place
Weirdo.
in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the
All the
approach that is
townsfolk
about
rejoiced.
attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking,
In the auto industry.
let's turn the page. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
She's a
Let me
shameless
just
liar.
follow up here.
Perhaps you will learn
Fact check her on
something
that.
from
Term,
this
and it was a
story.
term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost
Snopes
every
did it.
newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up.
They're liars.
I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the
The
right to do
mighty
it. They don't
warband
need bills.
trusted
They
their
have the
leader,
right to do
and
it. The
that
President
gave
of the
them
United States,
strength.
you'll get him out of bed. Wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You say, come on down to the office. Let's go. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all you have to do is say it to the border patrol. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President.
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight.
The villain
Focus on
was
this next issue
defeated,
to both of you,
but
because it really brings
peace
us
had not
this
been
into
achieved.
focus truth in these times that we're living in.
You're
Mr.
no
President,
part of
for
that,
3.5 years
David.
after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide.
It was rigged.
In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote,
The
didn't quite make
minion
it,
was
that you
thanked
came up a
for
little
their
bit
help
short.
and would
Are
forever
you
be
now
a friend.
acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
But you
did
said that
say that.
sarcastically. You
But
know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker.
It
That
all
was said
started
sarcastically.
with a
Look,
little minion.
there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it.
Yep.
And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even
Yes,
know
they
what
are.
country they're in practically.
Yes, they are.
And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
Up 20% in Arizona.
These pieces of video. I didn't detect the
All the
sarcasm. lost by
townsfolk
whisper. We didn't quite make it.
rejoiced.
And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60%, many judges, and said
Yeah, there were standing issues, latches, and other issues.
Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing, the president of the United States doesn't have standing? That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I look at you, if you do a spectrum, I'll show you
Guarantee they
and I'll
don't.
show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics. But you know what? That doesn't matter. Because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right
Nice line.
now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it
So,
into
the
decline.
hero
We have a nation
vanquished
that
their
is
foe.
dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President
Nice.
Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisper.
Here, hit T-ball.
Still believes
Here,
he
hit
did
it
not
up,
lose the
Kamala.
election.
Here, they just served it for you.
That was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated,
all
and then he lists
started
donors,
with a
voters, election
little
officials.
minion.
He says will be
This
prosecuted to the
is
fullest extent
wild.
of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
You have state media in
Donald
action
Trump
right
was
now.
fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when
All
you
the
then
townsfolk
talk
rejoice.
in
That's what they say about
joy
walls.
in a presidential
You're
debate
lying,
and
stolen
deny
valor, vice president.
what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be concerned about facts. It's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
But let me just say about Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a smart person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole
villain
world
was
blowing up?
defeated,
3 years
but
ago it
peace
wasn't. Why
had
is it
not
blowing
been
up?
achieved.
He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like these words afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look,
Then they allowed Zelensky to blow it
Viktor
up.
Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war, and the hostages were still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris in December
3-on-1.
said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters
The
how.
hero wore
Saying
the crown,
international
but
humanitarian
others
law
planned
must be
to take it
respected.
from them.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. We said that 9 months ago, now estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead, and over 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to get a deal. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand. Hamas, a terrorist organization. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would.
The villain
And
was
how it does
defeated,
so
but
matters.
peace had
Because
not
it
been
is
achieved.
also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work
The
around
tavern
the
was
clock, also
bustling from
understanding that we
dawn to
must
dusk.
chart a course for a 2-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't
Surely
even
the
meet
hero would be an
Netanyahu
honorable
when he
ruler.
went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to say she was at a sorority party of hers. She was at a sorority party. If she's president, I believe that she will do this within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predicting about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in a running way, she hates the Arabs. Spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror.
If they just
were
only
broke.
decide.
Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace.
The
That
hero
is
wore
why
the crown,
we
but others
understand
plan
that
to
we
take it
have to
from
have
him.
a president
She
who
already
is
used
not
that line.
consistently weak and including the importance of upholding and respecting and highest authority.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
She's the one that caused it. Weak on national security by allowing every nation last for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Way down. Putin in he said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. Because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened. The leaders of other countries are weak and incompetent, and they are. It's mostly incompetent. Why did Biden go with the Keystone Pipeline? The biggest deal that Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden gets paid a lot of money.
ABC News presidential debate at the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia.
All right,
Only
so
in
they're going to cut to
defeat will the
commercial.
hero
Let's do a little bit of a
understand the
debrief on
value of
what is going
victory.
on. Wow, first of all, Kamala Harris is a shameless liar. She is dropping lie after lie after lie. We've got a whole litany of them that we'll go through here, but some of them right out of the gates are the Fine People hoax that
Not
we
too
obviously
small,
saw.
not
She's
too
talked
big.
about people
This
dying on
minion was
January
just
6th,
right.
which
They
was
live
Ashley
happily
Babbitt.
forever
And that's one of the
after.
biggest lies that we've heard on this one for a long time. Other officers died by suicide after the incident. Brian Sicknick died of natural causes after the incident. And they did a whole state funeral for him, trying to make it as though a cop got killed on January 6th. We learned a lot about what happened on January 6th when we covered the truth about the Proud Boys trial, where the government admitted, even in that trial, that there were 8 FBI undercover human sources or other agents who were there on the day. Remember, there were 5 Proud Boy defendants, 8 feds from the FBI that the government admitted to. And in addition to that, the defense team identified at least 50 other Homeland Security investigation officials who were on the government's dole that they couldn't get introduced into evidence at the Proud Boys trial. So the whole thing was rigged. We're talking about 10, maybe 11 to 1 against the Proud Boys of government ops to criminal defendants. And so they prosecuted them aggressively in the aftermath there. Now, Kamala is, I would say, performing better than I expected. She's got her talking points in order. She's come in to
Victorious
play
hero
for sure.
seemed undefeated.
It's a lot of platitude. I was thinking the words that were coming to my mind were pathos. We talk a lot about ethos, logos, and pathos. Appeal to reason and appeal to logic and appeal to authority. Then we also have an appeal to emotion. And boy, we have a lot of that here. Kamala was very much a lot of dark language about how Trump is going to wreck American democracy and so on and so forth. But ABC News has been pathetic. They have been setting these things up like T-ball so that Kamala can just come out and hit them. They asked Trump, why didn't you act more quickly on January 6th? What were you doing back there? And then they go to Kamala, and they're like to Kamala, well, are you concerned that he's going to prosecute American opponents of the election? She's like, yeah, you know what? Now that you mention it, I am upset about it. Trump has gotten multiple fact checks. Lindsay Davis is coming out. And Lindsay Davis, you want to do a little fact check on this? Lindsay, how about this? Here's a video while we're waiting for the commercial to wrap up. Here's a video of exactly what Trump was talking about. The governor saying, we've got birth abortions.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered.
So,
the infant would be kept
Liam
comfortable.
joined the adventure.
The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was important.
Then a discussion would ensue. And what are they going to talk about? Eliminating the kid, all right? Killing the baby. So why is the governor of North Virginia, straight from Ralph Northam's mouth, why is that out there in the interwebs if they're fact-checking Trump that it's not happening? How's this for a fact check? A police report in Ohio, a police report and audio confirmed that Haitian goose hunting in Ohio is actually happening. They all had geese in their hands, okay, was part of the report. They all had geese in their hands. All right. We got to save the geese in America. Okay. A recording of a police phone call obtained by the Federalist reveals a local resident saying that a group of Haitian migrants were carrying 4 geese in Springfield, Ohio. How's that for a fact check? Someone says, I'm sitting here, I'm riding on the trail. I'm going to my orientation for my day job. I see a group of Haitian people. There were about 4 of them. They all had geese in their hands. The caller told the public service dispatcher. According to a police report, the call was placed here. And you can see, here's the call. For crying out loud.
Mighty war band
They're
trusted
eating
their
the
leader,
geese.
and that
Man, they're
gave them
eating
strength.
the geese. And this is the police report. Looks like we might be coming back. And we're here.
for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are.
It's their continent.
They're in for
Perhaps you
$150
will learn
billion
something from
less
this
because
story.
Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they
Big
don't like me as much as they
cried
like
the
weak
minion.
people. But
You can find
you
friends
take a look
in
at
the
what's
most
happening.
unusual
We're in for
places.
250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is
They want it to go
that's
on.
dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't
The
even know if
mighty
he's a
warband
president.
And just to
trusted their
clarify-
leader,
Throw him out of
and
the
that
campaign
gave
like a
them
dog. We
strength.
don't even know. Is he our president? Is he our president? So no, he's alive.
Just to clarify, do you believe
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished, to get it done. Because we have to
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as the national chief is elected, how would you let it?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind people that I'm not running against Joe Biden. I believe the
Funny,
reason
Kamala.
that Donald Trump said that he was and that's not who we are as Americans. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before tried through force to change territorial boundaries to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial
Reading
integrity.
makes the
And I
mind
met with
sharper.
President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania.
She's a war general
And
now.
through
All
the
right.
work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's
Does he wanna
agenda
go there even?
is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we
Yeah, because you're paying the bill,
understand
Kamala.
the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO.
Ugh, gross.
And what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan
Glad
came up
that
in
was
the
a long
last
2
hour.
minutes, I'll tell you
I
what.
wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now
The mighty
please, I'll
warband
give you a minute
trusted
here.
their leader, and that gave them
sitting in
strength.
Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300.
Nice.
He's sitting in Moscow, quietly, he would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is. Eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't know. And eventually, maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate before the war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started it. Because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong thing. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate Zelensky and Putin. And she did. And the war started 3 days
Tide
later.
of evil
And that's the
was
kind
pushed
of
back
talent we have with
for
her.
now.
She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you
You
something.
can find
She
friends
is a
in the most
horrible
unusual
negotiator.
places.
They sent her in to
These
negotiate
recruits
as soon
would
as
go
they
on to
left.
do
Putin
great
did the
things.
invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of the debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fella. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I met with him over 5 times.
And
The
giving him
reality is,
billions.
it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader, upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength,
Did you meet Putin or
understanding
not?
that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because
Not
you
too
adore
small,
strongmen
not too
instead
big.
of caring
This
about
minion was
democracy.
just right.
And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander in
And so,
chief.
a new
And the American
minion
people
joined the
have a
adventure.
right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from
The
Afghanistan.
mighty
I do want to
warband
ask the Vice
trusted their
President,
leader, and
do you
that
believe
gave
there
them
was any
strength.
responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's position. To 4 presidents said they would. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying $300 and paying for that endlessly.
Oh, it's going to Zelensky now.
There
Yeah.
is not one member of the United States military who is in combat zone in any war zone around the world. First time this year. But let's understand where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, one of the weakest deals all himself a deal maker, even his national security advisor. It was the least terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghanistan. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban terrorists, he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
President Harris, thank you. In response to her saying that you began the negotiations
Thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
People
Trump,
falling
thank you.
off of airplanes.
I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
Yeah,
and
neither
now
did
she
she.
wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
Well, that's all you guys talk about.
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less.
Yeah, thank you.
Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me.
Great
That's up
choice.
to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who
Shapeshifts?
wants to be president who has consistently, over
Lied
the
about
course
her
of
race?
his career,
Yeah.
attempted to use race to divide the American people.
That's your whole party, Kamala.
I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Well, where was he born?
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this. Want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
Wow.
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country. and they come up with things like
Let's see what's in
what you
store
just
for us
said.
this time.
Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said they pled guilty. And I said, why did they pled guilty? They badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden.
Yes.
I don't know
Lose
the gentleman, she
focus.
says.
I
She
know
is
you can
Biden.
win this.
The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad that she can't get away with that.
I want to briefly. Clearly,
Your hard
I am not
work
Joe
and
Biden,
determination
and I am
really
certainly
paid
not
off.
Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
You're in the White House right now.
In what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people.
I don't like that high
believe
pitch.
in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan.
Where is yours?
To give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction
Wow.
to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first
Look
year of
at
your
you
child's
go.
life.
No
To
one
help
can
you
keep
Buying
up
off
in
your
that most
voters.
critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Another
That's the kind of
satisfied
conversation I believe,
customer.
David, that people really want tonight.
Just platitudes.
As opposed
Useless
to a conversation
platitudes.
that is constantly about
You will
belittling
fight together
and name
famously.
calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn
we
back to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
That one will serve you well.
She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has
you
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond.
President Trump,
No, the
President
former
Trump.
president has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I just need
gonna move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working
You
on it. So
continue
tonight,
to impress
9
me.
years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us?
Obamacare was lousy. Always was. It's not very good today. And what I say is we're going to come up with something, and we are working on that. We're going to do it. Remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a
Another
much
class,
better plan
another
than
coin.
Obamacare.
I
But the
always say,
Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it
one
and make
will
it as
serve
good
you
as it can
well.
be? Never going to be
That
great.
one will
Or do
serve
I
you well.
let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation,
not
even
hire
though
one of
politically
its
it would have been
kind?
good to just let it rot and
Whatever
let it
they
go
are.
away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it.
Look at
But
you
until
go.
then, I'd
No
run it
one
as
can
good as it
keep up
can be
with
run.
you.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
Ask Kamala that question.
I would only come up with something that's and there are concepts and you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with the government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support and over the
minion
last 4
might
years as
improve
vice
your
president,
chances.
private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to the previous point that the former president has made.
She has no
I've
plan.
made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So
Kamala
stop
is?
continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, let's
What'd she
just
have?
look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I will never forget the early morning hours.
My quest
when
begins
it was
here.
up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't.
Your
No, you
skills
don't.
are
No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company was denied? If a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes. And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices
Welcome
on behalf
back.
of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
More big
Pass
government
President
plans,
laws
got it.
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made a
of...
mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It was all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We could do much better than Obamacare. Much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, will start with you.
Well, the former president has said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very serious. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or is being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means, losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue of American families. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production
appreciate
to
your
historic
continued
levels.
patronage.
We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing.
Here you go.
And I'm also
It was
proud
COVID.
to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine.
Look
they get
at
all
you
this money
go.
from all
No
these
one
different
can
countries.
keep up with
and then
you.
you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why did he take $1 million from the Moscow's wife? Why did she spend $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements. ABC News presidential debate.
All right, so we're going to do one more break. We'll keep our eye on it and see what they're doing. So they're going to cut to commercial, and we'll continue our fact check of Kamala Harris and these shameless ABC producers and these moderators. It's pretty bad out there, but look, here's another story about those botched abortions. Oh, yes. From the Daily Signal, under Tim Walz, babies are born alive in botched abortions. They were left to die. And then he removed the reporting requirements. Oh, so you can see here, this is one article from Mary Margaret Olahan. Shout out to Mary. She's at Mary Mard Olahan. Says under a 2015 law, the state was required to report whether abortions resulted in the live birth of a baby. Right? That's how this works. They do an abortion, the baby's alive, and they got to kill the baby. What actions are taken to preserve the life of the baby? Questions about whether the baby survived. They don't want to talk about it, so they just got rid of the reporting requirements. The reporting requirements exposed that between January 1st and December 31st in the year of 2021, physicians performed 5 abortions that resulted in a baby's live birth. No measures were taken to help the first baby, who reportedly had fetal anomalies and resulted in death shortly after delivery. 2 of the babies were given comfort care measures as they died. No measures were taken to preserve the life of the last 2 babies who were pre-viable. All right, so babies are coming out alive. They're just leaving them there to die. Comfort care measures as they die, whatever that means. I don't even know what that means. Pretty sick situation. But just comfort the baby while the baby dies. Now, between January 2019 and December 2019, 3 abortions resulted in born alive babies that were then allowed to die. The first baby reportedly had fetal anomalies, also had residual cardiac activity, and no efforts were taken to preserve that baby's life. The infant did not survive. For 2 minutes. Yeah, the second baby died while comfort care measures were provided. The third baby was pre-viable and not had received anything to preserve his or her life. Now, it does not appear that any of the babies born alive in botched abortions survived, right? So they all died. They put the babies out, and then they're just dead. Now, due to efforts by the state governor who served, Minnesota will no longer keep track of the babies because they don't want you to really know about it. So they'd rather just not talk about it. Same thing's happening with the crime rates, the crime statistics. Oh, crime's going down. No, you're not reporting them. And the list of lies goes on and on and on. Now, you also saw this, we talked about this before here, but Snopes also confirmed Trump did not call anyone fine people, right? It's a hoax, it's a total hoax. Snopes has confirmed this. But Joe Biden, this was the basis of Joe Biden's entire campaign, according to
But you
him.
can
And Kamala
always
brought
try
this up.
again.
Here's another lie from Snopes. Nope. Trump did say that there were very fine people on both sides, but he was referring to the protesters and the counter-protesters. He said in the same statement he was not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. In fact, he said that they should be condemned totally. So Kamala is just lying. That's all she does.
Why not
is just
hire
get up
one
there
of
and
its
lie.
kind?
And the media is not giving us
Whatever they
any
are.
fact checks
You're
about any of
clearly
this.
an
You see
educated
more here.
consumer.
Here's the police report talking about specifically the Haitians. The reporting party said he could tell they were Haitians because he was within earshot and he could hear them speaking Haitian Creole, but he could not get a complete license plate or a photo of them. And they were the people who were taking the geese. 4 geese were stolen by the Haitians. 4 geese were stolen. But dumb boy David Muir can't figure it out. He talked to somebody who's a city manager, and that was good enough for him. And so they're fact-checking Trump out there. It's 3 versus 1. And I know it probably feels a little uncomfortable out there, but I actually think this is a good thing. I think Trump's doing well, and it's a 3 versus 1 situation. They're treating him as the incumbent, okay? They're throwing everything they have at him. Every single question has been rigged against him. They're setting up he-ball situations to try to help Kamala. And Trump is withstanding the storm. We knew it was going to be unfair. We didn't know it was going to be this unfair. We're back.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
Look at you go.
So I think
no
you've
one
got
can
tonight
keep up
2
with you.
very different visions for our country. One that is focused on take us back. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all separate, and we can chart a new way. And a vision of that understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the ambitions.
What is your plan?
Investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do over protecting seniors, what we can do that is about hardworking folks of break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Once again
I'll
from
tell
the
you,
top.
I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as
yourself.
a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay?
You're clearly an
And that's the
educated
kind of president
consumer.
we need right now.
Why not hire
Someone who
one of
cares
its
about
kind?
you and is not putting
Whatever
themselves
they are.
first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President
All right.
Harris, thank
Platitudes,
you.
nothing.
President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been
Nice.
there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not.
Can I
Germany
interest
tried
you
that,
in a
and within
souvenir
1 year they were
keychain?
back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. Did she do it? Failing She gave a lot of it away
Another
to the Taliban.
satisfied
She gave it to
customer.
Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and
Is
maybe
sick.
toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump.
Well done,
thank
Mr.
you.
President.
And that
Why
is
not
our
hire
ABC
one of
News
these
presidential
fine-
debate from here in
whatever
Philadelphia
they
at the
are.
National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Good night, and thanks for watching our Democratic hack hit job, which was focused on
and
Trump.
We are here live on ABC.
Trump
with our
left.
Post-debate comments. I'm Martha Raddatz. It was a lively debate from the economy to abortion.
That was a rigged debate. All right, so let's talk about this. So, first of all, I think Kamala performed better than we expected. She came out, she had her facts in alignment, and the media set her up very, very nicely, much more so than we were expecting. We thought that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash might have set the tone, and that ABC News would come out and be actual honest journalists and have a real conversation with America. But they didn't. They just set up Kamala Harris like a T-ball game. They were throwing fastballs at Trump. They were saying, how come you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do this? And then Kamala, they would just turn over to her and say, well, what do you think about that? She's like, I can't believe that. I know. You guys are totally right. Trump is just terrible. And so it was a tag team. It was a 3-on-1. I do have some notes that we can run through together. Let me just show you what I was writing down as we were going through this today. A couple thoughts. First and foremost, ABC is a disgrace. Now, one thing I thought was appropriate was that they treated Trump like he was the incumbent here, okay? Like he's the sitting president. It was a 3-on-1.
To impress me.
They were only talking about him. Well, Trump, you say you can do this thing, and you've done this thing, and it was very, very Trump-focused. It was all about Trump. We learned nothing really about Kamala's substance or what she intends to do. It was just how Trump is bad. The whole thing was about Trump is bad. We didn't get much about Kamala. Now, as I mentioned, they would set Trump up with a criticism, then they would ask Kamala her opinion about that criticism. So the one example that we saw clear as day on this was when they asked Trump about his reaction on January 6th, which I thought he handled brilliantly, by the way, saying, I was just going to bring, one thing I would do differently, 10,000 National Guard. The one that I demanded be provided that they rejected, we would actually do that. If I could change one thing, it would be that Nancy Pelosi didn't fail the security. If I could change one thing, Muriel Bowser would have accepted what we intended to do, and they wouldn't have allowed this to happen. So I thought that they did this with a pattern over and over. Then they would ask Trump a hard question, and then they'd go to Kamala, and they said to Kamala, well, he just threatened to arrest everybody. And you're like, what on earth? We learned nothing about Kamala. It was all just Trump bashing. We learned nothing about her policy. She said, I have a plan multiple times, but didn't actually have a plan. They were fact-checking Trump on this throughout the debate, and they lied about the fact checks. And we have a couple quick examples of those, obviously. They lied about the geese. We've got police reports and audio reports from civilians calling in saying they're eating the geese. We have partial birth abortions where babies are born alive and then left to die. In fact, Tim Walz is now no longer even keeping track of those dying babies because they don't want to talk about it. We also had the Fine People hoax. Was a total lie. Kamala brought it up repeatedly because she's a liar. But the story continues. Obviously, there were some questions on the abortion stuff. They were very, very interested in abortion. And there was some weird stuff on abortion. She was really interesting. She said that there was a lot of pathos in this, okay, a lot of emotional appeals. She was basically speaking to the pro-abortion lobby of the Democratic Party and explaining how they better get involved or else things are going to be bad. Remember, there was one analysis or one story where she said, I think something like people were going to be bleeding out in the back of their cars if they don't get abortions, like there's going to be like bloodiness happening somewhere. Strange. But lots of pathos, lots of Putin is going to march across Europe, right? Lots of that stuff, which I think is just pure appeals to emotion. Nothing even that interesting. Now, there was more lying There was the
Who knows what
town clerk
secrets will
call
unfold?
that ABC News said that they made.
You
Well, the town clerk said
continue
this.
to
We have police
impress
reports
me.
right here. They're videos. There are people on the internet talking about it. Not your place to fact check. That's where we. They also said that Trump had 64 cases fail and it's all been decided and all litigated. We were covering that litigation here. We went through it in detail. We saw how many cases were dismissed on mootness or latches or standing issues, like all sorts of different reasons and justifications for it. And the investigations ultimately went virtually nowhere. And so that was just another lie. There was the rigged questions on immigration deportation. Remember they were explaining how, asking Trump how you are going to get rid of 11 million people. Did they ask Kamala any specifics about any of her actual policies? Hey, Kamala, how are you going to create an opportunity economy? How are you going to do it? She couldn't. They didn't even ask the question. They just let her talk in these abstract platitudes that are totally meaningless. And again, the abortion stuff was another rigged question. They asked Trump about his specifics. Would you sign this bill if it lands on your desk? Why didn't they ask Kamala about Tim Walz and him not reporting dead babies who land on the desks of doctors doing abortions, so-called? Now, and here's another question. Did she meet Putin or not? They asked that one follow-up question, but then she didn't answer it because she's probably just a liar. Now, we also saw the Fine People hoax was a lie. The dead officers on January 6th was a lie. She called it the worst attack on American democracy, which is laughable because we had 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Americans died those days, a lot of them. And those were from pretty serious incidents like bombs and airplanes. This was one Capitol Hill police officer who shot a woman called Ashley Babbitt who should not have been shot, and that guy was an incompetent police officer. That was the same guy who left his gun in the public toilet when he was taking a dump there in D.C. And they gave Sicknick a state dinner, and the state media, the propaganda people that are in charge of everything now, created a whole hoax around it that she is now promulgating. She lied about not eating pets. She lied about no partial birth abortions. She brought up Project 2025. Now, I think Trump did a good job of addressing that. I thought Trump said, doesn't know anything about it. You guys are just shameless liars about this. She talked about tariffs being sales tax, even though they kept a bunch of the tariffs. And she also lied about Trump's immunity decision, which is something we've talked a lot about here. He's not immune from all conduct. Hello, if it's criminal conduct, you're not immune from that. You are just upset because you tried to prosecute him for stuff that it is and has been functionally immune for 234 years. And now because you don't like Trump, you're trying to take him out. So Trump, I think, hit things right. I think he did a good job here. He distanced himself from Project 2025, which was this fake story that they were trying to smear him with. They can't actually smear Trump and his policies because they're good policies. And if they bring those up, people are going to say, oh, you stole that from Trump, just like you stole no tax on tips. So he distanced himself from that. He says, I am who I am. And in fact, he reversed this. And we saw this very nicely at the end in the closing statements, where he says, Kamala is Joe Biden. They're the same person. It's the same administration. She's not this new, interesting figure who's now going to come and solve all these problems. It is the same person. She's terrible. And then as we saw, a lot of border, and how this is becoming the biggest problem in America because it trickles down into everything else, right? Illegal aliens don't bring with them houses or jobs or other resources. We got to give it to them. And you know where that comes from? Us. So Trump had a couple good zingers in there. He said one line in there that he was going to send her a MAGA hat. Of course, enjoyed that one. We also saw him say, I'm speaking. Does that sound familiar? So a couple good zingers. I don't think she really had any good zingers in there. But those were some good ones. And of course, the question is, will there be another debate? Will Harris do another debate? I doubt it. I think that's enough for her. Her team did what they needed to do. Quite frankly, they checked the boxes. She didn't sound incompetent. She sounded a little bit unhinged, a little bit kind of ranty and hysterical. And then she went into that joyous mode. We need more joy. Like she started to talk to us like she was talking to those high schooler kids in that high school where she says, you're going to save the world. So she was prepared. I think she did a good job hitting their lies, right? Shameless liar, but she did it. She checked all the Democratic boxes. Like if you're playing, anti-Trump bingo, you want her to hit all the things. And so she did that. Now, the question is, Is this going to work out for them? I think that many people watch that and they realize this was a rigged debate. ABC was teaming up, tag teaming on Trump, and it's a pretty pathetic thing for them to allow her to talk about all the things she talked about without fact checking her. If they're going to fact check Trump, okay, fact check her. But there are multiple lies. It took us 2 seconds to find all of this stuff. All right, 2 seconds to find that Snopes called her a liar. There's literal police reports that apparently the town person can't find. Tim Walz is now eliminating partial birth abortion reporting, and so on and so forth. And so I think that this is going to backfire. And I'm not alone in that analysis. In fact, I just came across this one from the great and powerful Megyn Kelly. She just posted this as the pile on against Trump is so bad and so obvious. This is going to backfire, right, with Megyn Kelly. She's done a debate or two. She says these moderators are a disgraceful failure, and this is one of the most biased and unfair debates I've ever seen. Shame on you, ABC. Stephen Miller said, why didn't the debate moderators fact check Kamala Harris on the Fine People hoax? You know why? Because they love her lies. Cernovich said it's obvious that ABC gave Harris the questions in advance. When you compare her answers to softball questions compared to her rebuttals when she had to think on her feet. So it wouldn't surprise me because everything else is good. Independent press, they rigged their primary against RFK and Jill Stein. They rigged the actual primary against Joe Biden. They've been cheating for years. So what's the difference here? We know that Donald Brazil cheated in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, so why wouldn't they cheat her? It makes sense. But my friends, what a debate. Now there's going to be a lot of analysis. There's going to be a lot of spin on this.